First, they need to declare that a clear red line exists and that any Russian drone, missile, or aircraft entering NATO airspace without clearance will be treated as hostile and shot down. No exceptions, no excuses. Second, they need to move NATO forces forward. There needs to be 24/7 air patrols over Poland and the Baltics, reinforced with U.S. as well as allied fighters, tankers, and airborne warning and control aircraft. Then Poland's air defense gaps need to be filled with additional surface-to-air missile batteries integrated into both NATO's command and control system and Ukraine's. Ukraine should become part of a European air shield to protect NATO member borders from threats originating in Russia and Belarus. Third, I believe that NATO needs to increase or accelerate the transfer of modern air power into Ukraine. The best way to protect NATO airspace is to stop Russian drones and missiles before they ever get near NATO borders. And that means more F-16s, longer range surface-to-air missiles, and lifting all the restrictions on how Ukraine employs them. Supporting Ukraine's air defense is not charity, it's collective defense. Finally, NATO must prepare retaliatory options. If Russia or Belarus continues to launch cruise missiles or drones that violate NATO territory, the alliance must reserve the right to strike those launch strike sites. Pardon me. That's not escalation, it's deterrence. Only by raising the cost to Moscow will Putin stop his aggression.
Let's cover also the reaction of NATO troops, because Poland didn't shoot down all the drones, allowing some to cross deeper into its airspace, and it's been reported that Poland and other NATO's air force used expensive missiles valued around $2 million per missile to take down drones that cost not so much, a fraction of that amount. How sustainable is this strategy for a possible prolonged war?
Well, it's not. But first, a lot of people use that cost effectiveness equation. I'd be real careful about doing that, because what is the value if one of those drones had a large lethal warhead and hit a school and killed several children? Then would have the cost of that missile that intercepted that cheap drone have been worth it? And so, the issue here is not on cost effectiveness. The issue is on effectiveness. Now, the point is a good one in the context of, at some point, you've got to be able to deal with mass. So Poland, as well as the other NATO countries, need to immediately improve their air defense capabilities. And I believe a lot of this effort is already underway. But, just like Ukraine has put together a layered air defense system, so should the NATO countries. Now, I think that Poland's already on their way to doing that. They are building an upper layer by expanding their Patriot missile systems and the integrated battle command system. And so they just executed their first Patriot battle command system, live fire. And then there is a lower range layer where Poland could increase and accelerate its procurement of short range air defense systems and very short-range air defense systems. I understand they're also increasing their buy of the Common Anti-Air Modular Missile, which is a British-designed missile family that's used by the United Kingdom, and it provides flexible networked intercepts against aircraft, drones, and missiles. So I think they can field a substantially stronger national counter-drone shield in a relatively quick time frame, but they would also be smart to follow Ukraine's lead in how Ukraine has put together a very effective layered air defense system.
There are also some discussions about the possibility of imposing a no-fly zone over Ukraine. It's not a new one, new discussions. There have been lots of such debates since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Would you support this idea, this plan on this during this stage of war in Ukraine?
It's a very good question. As you may or may not know, I was the Combined Joint Task Force commander for the no-fly zone over northern Iraq. And I'm here to tell you, it's a very, very complex and resource-intensive endeavor. So the devil's in the details. It depends upon the circumstances, the location. Are you talking about just Western Ukraine, or are you talking about all of Ukraine? What are the rules of engagement in terms of being able to respond to hostile acts that emanate out of Russia proper? And so, you know, one no-fly zone doesn't fit all. I do believe that there is some value in discussing kind of what I alluded to before, and that's integrating the air defense systems of your co-located nations along your border with Ukraine's. And you could envision, no-fly zone is a term that many people have different perceptions of, but you could envision incorporating aircraft, defensive aircraft from other nations being involved in air defense of not just Ukraine, but their own nations, that would involve flying over Ukraine and intercepting Russian missiles. So, yeah, I think that that is an option that needs to be further explored and see if there could be agreement with partner nations to actually implement.
There is also a renewed debate on the US commitment to security guarantees for Ukraine. US President Donald Trump has pledged to provide Ukraine with good security, and also according to Financial Times, the US could play its role in providing Ukraine with security, providing backstop for European troops, intelligence, reconnaissance, command and control, and other support. What is your take on that and assessment of possible military options for the US administration?
Well, first let's talk about something that's relatively new that your audience may or may not be aware of, and that's that Washington has approved the first US weapons package paid for by Allied funds under a NATO US mechanism that's called the Prioritized Ukraine Requirements List. The initial two $500 million tranches have cleared internally, and deliveries under several Allied-funded packages are already moving. What's in those packages? Well, Patriot air defense missiles and HIMAR rockets are among the first items that are flowing, and about $2 billion has already been secured. So total Allied commitments are expected to reach around $3.5 billion by October, specifically to buy US-made munitions for Ukraine. Now, why does that matter? Well, this is a pretty substantial effort at the burden sharing, what's called burden sharing. That's allies financing US stockpile drawdowns so that Kyiv gets high-impact systems faster, just as Russia ramps up its planning for winter strikes. So, allies are literally footing the bill to move US interceptors and rockets now. And that's speed plus scale when Ukraine needs it the most.
Let's also cover another interesting development regarding the drones warfare. From your perspective, is the US Air Force ready to counter drones? I mean, in terms of massive massive usage of such drones against airspace. To counter so-called Russian Air Force tactic, launching hundreds of such cheap drones against military targets.
Well, it's not really just an Air Force problem. The use of drones, quite frankly, is an alternative when combatants are unable to achieve air superiority. And people need to recognize that the Ukraine-Russia war is a set of different conditions than what the U.S. might find itself involved in, say, in the Southwest Pacific, defending Taiwan against a Chinese incursion. Okay, where those two combatants are separated by hundreds of miles. And so you're most likely not going to see, quite frankly, a bunch of quadcopters that have a range of about 10 or 15 kilometers making any difference. Now, your question's a good one, because certainly defenses against massed numbers of quadcopters do have an impact. But yeah, the United States military is paying attention to that. But we also have means that are not available to the Ukrainian Air Force today, and that's to be able to gain and maintain air superiority in the battle space. And that's why both Ukraine and Russia have reverted to the use of drones, which quite frankly are affecting armor and infantry tactics to a much greater degree than air forces. I would point to the fact that the Russians have not closed down any Ukrainian Air Force air bases yet. And Ukraine is very effectively using the aircraft that they do have in both offensive and defensive roles. So you got to look at the situation. Yes, small drones are a factor. Cruise missiles have always been a factor. They're becoming more of a factor, particularly with threats to the Arctic or across the Arctic into the United States. And as you're well aware, there's a lot of interest in the current administration in building and paying more attention to the importance of layered air and missile defense.